In these uncertain economic times, it's easy to be worried about protecting your wealth, your hard-earned savings, and your family's financial future. Plunging interest rates, the devaluating dollar, and political unrest constantly threaten what you have worked hard to earn and all that you own. That's why now it's more important than ever to protect your assets and have the money you need to make your dreams come true. Welcome to the Global Wealth Fortress Report with successful global entrepreneur and wealth preservation expert Joel Nagel. Joel's helped thousands of people just like you protect what you have so that you can make even more and make your every dream come true. So, sit back and enjoy Joel Nagel's offshore expert advice on how you can live the good life at a great price, where the sun never sets on your financial fortress.
Welcome to Joel Nagel's Wealth Fortress. I am Carter Clews from the Offshore Club. That's offshore.club. Let me give it a little plug there. And it is my pleasure to be the co-host of Joel Nagel's Wealth Fortress and to have with me Joel Nagel. Hey, Joel, how you doing?
Hey, Carter, great. I'm on the other side of the world, so I'm a little tired. It's been a little jet lag going on, but hopefully we'll have a good show today.
And you are coming to us from Vienna, Austria, right?
Yes, I am.
Incredible. So I am in York, Pennsylvania, which is far less picturesque, I might add, than Vienna, Austria. And so here it is 3:30, and there it's 7:30 in the evening, right?
That's about 8:30 right now.
8:30 in the evening. All right.
We've already gone off of daylight savings, and U.S. hasn't yet. So we have this little window where we're 5 hours off, and then next week we'll be back to 6 hours.
All right. Well, we're not going to keep you up all night with this, but we got a lot of important stuff to talk about because there's several things. You look at the economic situation in the U.S. I mean, you are the economic expert. You know, you are the nation's #1 asset protection attorney. You have clients that you have been advising for years, and I have saved millions of dollars with your advice on how to protect their assets. And I don't think that's ever been more important than it is right now with what's going on in Washington. Just the assault continues. I have to laugh because some people think, well, you know, this election yesterday where the Democrats just got absolutely devastated across the country is going to make the Democrats in Washington take a step back. It's not. It's not.
No, in fact, I think they're all doubling down. I just actually right before the show was reading some news feeds, and the one that caught my eye, of course, was the commercial truck driver in New Jersey who beat the longtime state president of the state Senate, whose campaign I think he financed with $153, and his campaign ad was shot on his cell phone. So good for him. I think he was able to touch and tap the discontent that people have with Washington right now. Same thing in Virginia, right? I mean, 2 weeks ago, nobody even heard of the Republican candidate, and Carib makes the comment that parents don't belong, saying what should happen or shouldn't happen in schools. And I mean, I think that's how out of touch people are. Like, of course I want to know what's going on in my kid's school. Like that,
you have no right.
That's the most important thing, right? Taxes and what's happening with my kids. And so
he
anyway,
said you have no right. You have 7 children, and he said you have no right to have any say in what is done to your children at school.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately we were in a position to send our kids to a private school, and that was exactly so. We had the choice we wanted, that they studied the things we wanted them to study, and not a lot of stuff that gets thrown in there in the name of political correctness. But coming back to your point, I mean, somebody like AOC, she doubled down and said, well, the reason the Democrats lost is because they were embracing the moderate wing of the party, and we should be even more aggressive, and instead of promising 1.7 trillion, we should be promising 7.1 trillion. And so they're just so totally out of touch with people. And I think these there's always a fall off of the party out of power in the midterm elections, but I think this is quite extreme. I mean, President Biden hasn't even been in office a year, and it's people just realize that something's wrong. And this money printing, when I see these official statistics about inflation, they're jokes. I mean, they're actually, you have to laugh or cry. It's kind of a disgrace, really, that they can tell you that inflation's at 2% or 3%. It's all transitory. I don't know about you, but the last time I went to the grocery store, I was like horrified. And
horrified. Let me show you a little picture here. See this? For those who think there's no inflation, there's your turkey price last year, and there's your turkey price now.
Exactly.
Okay. Unbelievable. It's going to a 25% increase in that price, along with everything else. So you're right. And Pelosi said the same thing that Ocasio-Cortez says. Well, no, we need to spend more. We need to spend more. Yeah. And so and to spend more, Joel, nobody knows this better than you, because you're the one who is the consultant to those who have assets they need to protect. There's only one place to get that money, and that's from your clients and from the average American worker, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's
of course it is. It is everybody. This notion that we're just going to tax rich people, it's a joke. I mean, if fuel goes up 100%, which it has in the last year, that's not a tax on wealthy. None of my clients are going to stop driving because fuel's $4 a gallon instead of $2 a gallon. That's a huge tax. It's a regressive tax. It's on the middle class and poor people who now have to figure out whether they have enough money to be able to fill their tank. I mean, these policies are absolutely crazy. And, the other notion about taxing the rich that's so far-fetched is that the U.S. Of all the OECD countries has the most progressive tax system in the world. I mean, it's already very progressive. So, people talk about the top 1%, they already pay over 50% of the taxes. The top 10% pay over 70% of all taxes. So, how much more do you want to tax? I mean, yes, you can raise tax rates, but the more you do that, you have economists like Art Laffer who came out with the Laffer curve that just showed that, the total revenues to government do not increase as you do that. People work harder and harder and harder to find ways to, minimize their tax, and wealthy people have that option. Again, workers, middle class, upper middle class people don't. I mean, there's a provision in the tax code that allows anyone, of course, wealthy would be the ones to take advantage of it, to move to Puerto Rico tomorrow and to reduce their tax burden by 90%. So instead of being in the 40% bracket, you're in the 4% bracket. Now, again, if you're the truck driver from New Jersey who just got elected to, the state Senate, and great for him, he's not moving to Puerto Rico. Who's moving to Puerto Rico? The hedge fund manager in New Jersey who makes $100 million, and he can reduce his taxes from $40 million to $4 million. Well, what happens to the government? They just lost $36 million of taxes from one guy. And, raising rates on everyone else is never, ever going to replace that lost income. So, Art Laffer, who was an economic advisor to Ronald Reagan, came out with the Laffer curve and, did very, extensive analysis, came back and said, the ultimate point for the government is about 25%. So 25%. If you have tax rates at 25%, people comply. They're not looking for loopholes. They're not looking to try to, avoid their taxes. They're going to pay them, and that's what gets them the maximum income to the government. But, a lot of this isn't about the maximum gain revenue to the government. It's about control, right? Who's got the power, exactly. Who's got the control, and the tax system is clearly used in that way.
Total control. And we know now that Pocahontas up there in Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, has introduced a bill to triple the budget of the IRS so they can send about 10,000 more agents out across the country. And those agents are not going to the wealthy. You don't need another 10,000 agents for the wealthy. These are going after everyday people who are trying to eke out a living and try to find a way to cope with the 40% in taxes, 40 to 50%. in taxes that they're now being forced to pay. And keep in mind, and Joel, see if you agree. You're the expert, not me. I'm a politician, and as sleazy as that is, that's what I've always been. But you're the expert on finance. But to me, look, when we say there's 40 to 50% taxes, that doesn't count one of the sneakiest tricks government pulls now, and that's on my water bill, on my road work bill, all of this. When I say, I thought I paid taxes to take care. Oh no, this is an assessment. Oh no, Mr. Clews, this is a fee. This is not a tax. I said, well, damn sure feels like a tax. I'm paying it every month.
Yeah, don't pay it and see what happens.
Yeah. Don't pay it. There's going to be a very dry house on my water bill. But it just, the government, I think I said last time, our government slogan, instead of e pluribus unum, should be, I'm trying to think what the Latin is, but there was a great column years ago by Mike Royko. It was in Latin, where's mine? Okay, where's mine? And that's what the government slogan should be. Now, years ago, I said in a meeting with Friedrich von Hayek, right? The great, he was Austrian, I believe, right?
Yeah, Austrian economist. And it was just a small private meeting about 40 years ago. And he said, I wrote it down all those years ago, and I still have it. He said, when a government begins considering you a primary source of income, you're no longer a citizen, you're a subject. Yeah, which I thought was a great statement. What do you think? That's absolutely correct. I mean, they say at the beginning of empires, tax rates are low and, there's widespread compliance. At the end of empires, tax rates are high and, and there's little compliance. I mean, look, the higher the rates go, everybody, I can remember one of my daughter's music teachers telling me very politely, well, Mr. Nagel, I'm sorry, I can only really take cash for the musical lesson because, or the guy who cuts your grass or whatever. I mean, everybody's trying to figure out how to just get by, they're not, and the more onerous the taxes become, you touched on this, tripling this army of IRS agents. You're absolutely right. I mean, look, people who make over $1 million a year, they're already in the IRS's crosshairs, with the supercomputers and the bank records and the brokerage accounts. Like they know what you've done practically before you've done it. And they honestly don't need that army just to go after quote unquote rich people. So if every, you do the math, if you have whatever it is, 8,000 new IRS agents and they all handle, a couple hundred cases a year, you're talking about millions and millions of, people. And a lot of people call me and they would tell me their situation. And, it really feels a lot more like a shakedown, I mean, these people show up and they're not leaving until they, can justify their existence. They have to justify their existence. They get paid bonuses, the more money they can come up with. And so for a lot of people, you get some notice, you underpaid your taxes by $2,000. Well, are you going to go hire a lawyer or a CPA and fight that, or are you just going to pay it? I mean, I think they kind of know where the pressure points are, and a lot of it feels more like a shakedown, really.
Well, Joel, let me ask you this. In my experience with IRS people, and I try not to have too many experiences with them, but in the experiences I've had, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is your area, I find it depends on who you happen to get. I had one who I owed back taxes, and I said, well, you're not going to take my Social Security, are you? She said, oh my goodness, we would never do that. If we took your Social Security, she said, the most we could ever take is 15%. But if we did, then it would put you in a position where you needed help from government. So why would we do such a thing? Well, unfortunately, I got another IRS agent a couple months later who took the 15% out immediately. And what's your experience on that?
They have to make their quotas. They have to get their pound of flesh. Ultimately what they'll do frequently with older people is they'll put liens on your home, and you'll think, well, they're not bothering me. But they don't realize that penalties and interest are growing day by day by day. And, then the people pass away and they've got maybe a couple $100,000 house. The kids or grandkids think they're going to inherit. And in reality, the IRS swoops in at that moment and it's all gone. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can lose your assets. Assets are hard to make and they're actually pretty easy to lose. You think about litigation, divorce, taxes. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Squandering it in bad investments, you name it. There's lots of ways you can lose your money. And, with our asset protection fortress, that's what we're really helping clients with. We're not investment advisors. I'm not telling you how to make money. I mean, that's kind of like, if you want to think of a sports analogy, that's the offense, right? How do you move the ball down the field? How do you score? That's the offense. But on the defense, I'm trying to tell people, this is what we can do to protect your assets. This is how we can make sure that you're not the low hanging fruit. The famous Chinese general Sun Tzu in the book, The Art of War, almost 3,000 years ago, said when he was planning to go into battle, he spent, lots and lots of time to figure out how to make sure that he couldn't lose the war. In other words, what was his defensive positioning? And he had to have that in place first. And if he could make sure that he couldn't lose the war, then, the outcome was victory, or stalemate. And that's certainly better than a loss. And that's what I tell my clients. Our job is to help you protect what's yours, make sure it can grow through, the type of investments that you make, that you have it for yourself, keep up with inflation that we've been talking about, but also preserve it and then pass it on to your kids, your grandkids, your relatives, your friends, your charities, whomever you want to leave your money to, right? I mean, even when you hear about these, multi-billionaires talking about, well, we're not going to leave that much money to our kids. I mean, they're leaving their money largely to charity exactly so they pay zero tax. I mean, again, the notion that like the estate tax, which Democrats also would like to do away with the exemptions and increase the amounts. Warren Buffett's not paying 1 cent of estate tax. Bill Gates is not paying 1 cent of estate tax. These guys know exactly how much money they have to give to charity. They're prepared to do that. They can still leave billions of dollars. They say we're only leaving a small percent, but I think Elon Musk, I think his net worth is something like $300 billion.
$300 billion now. Yeah.
I mean, even if he only leaves 10% to his heirs, and the rest to charity, that combination will ensure that he pays zero gift and estate tax, and he'll pass on $30 billion. That's a pretty good deal.
So when people like Gates are constantly running around boasting, I'm not leaving anything to my children, I'm leaving everything to charity, they really have an angle, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, there is a mentality that says, how much does somebody really need? I think Warren Buffett, he's leaving, about 10% of his net worth to his heirs. But again, those numbers, it sounds like, wow, he's a generous guy, but those numbers are still staggering. And, just like Andrew Carnegie, I'm sure the money they leave to charities will do good in the world. That's certainly their prerogative to do that. But yes, one of the elements in doing that is to ensure that they pay zero income tax, zero estate tax. I can remember when Barack Obama came out with one of his big tax increases around the same time as Obamacare. And I was talking to one of my clients, said, well, what do you think about that? Are you concerned about it? He's like, no, I'm just going to go sit on the sidelines. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, we went all to cash and I've got, $80 million sitting in the bank. And I don't have to work for the next couple of years. So, when governments think they're going to raise income taxes by raising rates, you have guys like this that say, well, they can't tax my wealth. And if I make zero income, the CEO of Apple, I think for many, many years, it was well known that his salary was $1. So how much of that $1 do you want to tax? But his net worth was in the billions, and they can access their wealth other ways, so that it's not considered a taxable consequence. So it would be a lot easier and simpler if we adopted policies and taxes that were logical, that were designed to, reach that pinnacle that Art Laffer talks about, that 25% kind of range. People wouldn't fight that. You could probably exempt the first $70,000 of income, to basically completely wipe out the need for middle and lower middle class incomes, lower middle class, particularly incomes from paying any tax. And then, maybe start with a 15% rate. Ronald Reagan did it, and people said it was going to be a tragedy, and revenues to the government exploded. So, it's kind of, it's a misnomer to think that raising taxes increases revenue. It's maybe actually just the opposite.
As did John Kennedy. His first act as president was a major tax cut. Let me ask you this, because I think I want to talk in a few minutes about the President's Week 25 coming up, particularly about a guy who I have tremendous admiration for. I know he's going to speak there, Porter Stansbury. But before we get to that, let me ask you a question, because I think it hits everybody who's watching, whether they have a small amount of assets or millions in assets. What do you tell your clients who come to you and want advice about putting money in the bank? Because, and let me put in context, the reason I ask is I think my bank pays 0.01% interest on savings at a time when inflation is 14%. So I lose with every dollar I put in the bank every month. So what do you tell your clients about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The rates have been held down artificially low. The Fed has been out there buying up the government's own debt to keep rates artificially low. There's been some signaling that they're going to ease up on that, which in theory means rates will rise. The problem with that, of course, is there's so much government debt, and they're only able to service it because interest rates are so low. If interest rates go up, then how does the government service its debt? And we'll get to the point where no matter what happens, there's just not enough revenue to even service the interest, let alone the principal on the debt. And we're rapidly getting to that point. But for the individual, to me, the 0.1% is, that's not a reason to put my money in a bank at all. I mean, I would be looking for productive uses of the money, and some people think that we may be going through a melt up in the markets.
Right.
Again, because people don't have any other place to put their money. So a lot of money is going into the market. If I was going to put money in the market right now, I wouldn't be looking at the high flying stocks. I'm not looking at, Tesla with, infinite PEs, even though I really do like the company. But, I'm probably going to be looking for boring companies that, kick out a nice dividend. I'm going to be looking at pharmaceuticals and banks. I mean, banks are a great example. They'll pay you 0.1% to be a depositor, but if you buy a good bank stock, you might still get between 3 and 4% dividend. Plus, the value of the shares potentially is going to go up as well. So, if the share goes up 5% and you get, a 3% dividend, I mean, the 3% dividend alone is 30 times greater than what the bank's going to pay you to put the money in on deposit. So there are things that you can do. I mean, I personally, if I like hard assets, I like real estate, I like gold, and I'm sort of late to the party, but I like and respect the whole crypto complex. The thing I like the most about Bitcoin is it's got a finite number. Some people say, that's not worth anything. Well, what's the US dollar worth? I mean, it's only worth something because we believe it's worth something. And by the way, the US dollar is unlimited. There's unlimited production. The production of new bills is around the clock, 24 hours a day. Bitcoin's fixed. And that's, I think, why we see the number of, in Bitcoin, it is very volatile. So I'm not suggesting that everybody runs out and puts all their money in Bitcoin. You have to have sort of a strong disposition to live with the volatility. But the volatility, on the trajectory over longer periods of time is almost nothing but up. So yes, on any given day, it could be up 10%, down 10%, even more. But at my conference, I know we're going to talk about President's Week next.
Yeah.
At my conference
Yeah.
last year,
Good
Bitcoin was $17,000, and today it's $62,000. And yes, there's been a lot of volatility in between, but that move from 17 to let's say over 50, to me seems rather permanent. And there's going to be volatility, this next year as well. But I think if we're having this conversation a year from now, we're probably going to be talking about $100,000 Bitcoin. So, the interest rates are so low, so artificially low, that it is forcing people to look for alternatives. So whether you go with a big cap pharmaceutical, oil company, bank that can pay you a dividend, whether you have a little appetite for speculation, of a cryptocurrency, I think these things are going to do well, just because what else can you do with your money? We're going to get any return, and that's why you see institutional investors, hedge fund managers, wealthy individuals, moving into those same areas so they can get some return.
Yeah, when you said about the boring stocks, it reminded me Peter Lynch, right? Who is just a genius, obviously a genius. Magellan Fund, I think he was, and I read his book, and he said, "My best advice to you is to find a boring company that makes a boring product to invest in." Exactly what you just said. Exactly what you just said.
And I used to love to go to malls and just hang out and see what consumers were doing, because ultimately that's what drives the economy. I suspect now hanging out at the mall is not the best way to read the tea leaves anymore. You have to probably, watch where the Amazon truck drivers are, going and what they're delivering. But because a lot of the malls themselves are on hard times these days. But you're absolutely right. I mean, when I see things like let's say waste companies, that's not glamorous. Waste management, for example, that's not exciting. That's not glamorous. Nobody even likes to talk about garbage, but you need your garbage to be picked up. And if next year the price of garbage pickup goes up 10%, what are you going to do? Not pay it? Well, some of these industries are almost like little monopolies, and they're going to do well regardless of what's happening in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the wealthiest men in the state up here in Pennsylvania is Scott Wagner, who is the refuge removal. Well, you know it because you're in Pennsylvania. You ran for governor. Yeah. Unfortunately, he lost to Wolf, but that's life, and that cost us all a pretty penny. You mentioned the conference and Bitcoin. I know one of the speakers is Eric Ajema, who really, to me, is just a leading expert on Bitcoin.
We have several people talking about different aspects of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And yes, Erica's just wonderful. She's my go-to person when I have a issue or question about something. And, to me, she's the very pleasant face of Bitcoin. She's Miss Bitcoin. She eats, breathes, sleeps Bitcoin. And we're so happy to have her there. She invited me to come and speak at the Miami Bitcoin conference this past year, and that was a fantastic event. She's also a very compassionate person who likes to teach, and she loves being in a room with businessmen and women who have no idea or knowledge about Bitcoin. I mean, she is the best, Bitcoin 101 person that I've ever heard just kind of explain it, where it came from, what drives the price. When people say, "Oh, it's hocus pocus, not worth anything," if you listen to somebody like Erica, you'll realize that that's simply not true.
Yeah, she's absolutely brilliant, and as you say, she can reduce it down to terminology that even someone like me can understand. And she's one of what 17 speakers, right? Let's talk about this conference.
Yeah, I think we're right around 20 speakers, and it's my 25th anniversary. We invited really some top-notch speakers, and it being the silver anniversary, I was really kind of shocked. Nobody said no. Everybody's coming. I think it's going to be, for a number of the speakers, kind of a reunion. We mentioned Porter Stansberry. He's really been a good friend of mine for a long, long period of time. Really, when we became friends when I was a very young lawyer, he was a very young writer. He wasn't even, I don't even think he had a job. He had an internship with Agora Publishing. And, he just sold his publishing company, Stansberry Research, for, more than $1 billion. He's the newest minted billionaire in the U.S.
Excellent.
And he's going to be talking about some of his investment strategies that apply to everyone, that everybody can take advantage of. Kirk Chisholm is a great speaker. He has a nationally syndicated podcast called Money Tree Investing. He's a great investment guy who's always looking to try to help you, outperform the market. But also, the reason I like Kirk so much is he's really focused on what I do, the asset protection side. So he's always looking for ways that you can outperform on the one side, but take less risk on the other side. So he's trying to help you, maximize your yield but while minimizing your risk, which I think that's really important. My good friend Mike Cobb is going to come and talk about helping people, buy real estate globally. I know you're going to be talking about, a plan B kind of outside the country. We have some other immigration and investment citizenship type speakers. My friend Joel Figueira from Portugal is talking about the Golden Visa program there. Jamie Elene is talking about all the Caribbean programs where you can get citizenship really quickly if that's what you want to do. Our keynote speaker, Ron Paul, is just a fantastic guy. He's been kind of the leading advocate for economic liberty and freedom now for many years. I just wrote an article for Escape Artist Insider magazine, and I talked about the early days of our conference going back 25 years ago. And Harry Brown was a frequent speaker, and he really loved our forum. He really loved talking about economic freedom, and passed away in the early 2000s, I think 2005 or 6, somewhere in there. Ron Paul is really, he's a 2-time presidential candidate, and he really picked up the baton where Harry left off. So he's speaking, and I'm really happy to tell you that Ed Griffin is coming to speak.
Incredible.
He's an amazing guy. He really is. He's actually going to be celebrating his 90th birthday with us. You look back at something like, his best-selling novel, The Creature from Jekyll Island. He was an old guy when he wrote that book,
That's
back
exactly
in the 80s.
right.
And it's a great book. It starts out reading like a spy novel. I highly recommend it to anyone who can get their hands on a copy. Everything you read about Ben is still relevant today, and so we're really happy to have him there. So,
well, it's a vital book because it exposes the Fed. It exposes the Fed, and with that book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Ed Griffin was one of the first people to come out and say, "Folks, we have a problem. This is an institution of bankers. That's all it is. That is out of control because they call themselves the Fed. They're not part of the Fed, and they are controlling the money in your pocket without any responsibility to you whatsoever through our government." So that's pretty important. And I want to make clear while we're talking about this, because we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to talk a little bit about Porter Stansberry because I'm so fond of him. But folks, go to offshore.club, click on the tab at the top of the page that says events, and you can sign up for this conference. There's a limited number of seats available. So
there might still be a few seats, but if there's not, we have a virtual registration, and if you can't make your way to Las Vegas a little over a week from now, then look at the virtual registration. You'll hear all the speakers. You'll actually be able to ask questions even from the live stream option through the technology. So that's fantastic. You'll miss the cocktail parties and the dinners and things like that, but it's almost as good. If you can come, please come. It'll be a fantastic opportunity. The last thing I'll leave you with, though, from the conference, we have 3 top-notch speakers that are truly experts on tax issues, and they're literally coming through these proposals day by day by day. Of course, that goes back to politics, which is your area. I think President Biden has probably been weakened because of the these by-elections, and
From
nobody
your
knows.
lips to God's ears. From your lips to God's ears.
Nobody knows exactly how these bills are going to play
Yeah.
out.
Yep.
They all have tax increases embedded in them.
Huge.
Even when somebody like Joe Manchin says, "Well, we're not going to go with this, $3 trillion version. We're still going to go with the $1.75 trillion version," which means there's still going to be, tax increases. So they're keeping their eye on that very, very closely. There are concerns about President Biden wanting there to be retroactive effect. He's suggested either January 1, 2021, meaning all the way back to the beginning of the year. So imagine at the end of the year, they say there's going to be a 3% tax increase. Well, if you get that memo on the last day in the last month, the net effect is a 36% tax increase on your last month. So, I mean, I think that would be craziness. It has happened before under the Clinton administration. That's the only time in my career that I can recall that the taxes were increased retroactively. I think you do have people like Joe Manchin who are fairly opposed to that concept. So, whether that happens or not for 2021, we know it's going to happen in 2022. So, even without knowing what those changes were going to be, I wanted to have the top experts there. I have Darlene Hart, who heads up a company called U.S. Tax. She's based in just all over the world. She works out of Zurich, Switzerland. Christopher Braun is one of the most knowledgeable tax lawyers in the country, bar none. I mean, he stays up nights reading the minutia of proposals and the Senate committee draft versus the House committee draft. And, he sends me synopsises that are 35 pages, and he's breaking down a bill that's, 2,000 pages. And then Mari Glazer is a good friend of mine. He's an accountant CPA. He's in his early 80s, another octogenarian at the conference. And, he's been in the trenches, fighting the fight for a long time. And he has a lot of wisdom to bring to the conference. And the three of them are speaking on, these changes. And, we'll have maybe 6 weeks from the conference till the end of the year. Depending on how the laws play out, I think you may need to make some changes to your affairs, or even make some decisions. Like, for example, if capital gains tax rates are going to go up in 2022, should I sell my, stocks that I have, big gains in 2021, so that I'm going to pay my capital gains tax now, but it's going to be cheaper the next year. I mean, those are the kinds of discussions that will be taking place at President's Week. So I hope a number of your viewers can join us.
And go to offshore.club, click on the little tab at top that says events, and get your seat now, because it's selling out. And before we're almost out of time. If we're out of time, but I'm going to stretch it a little bit here. I promised that I was going to talk a little bit, that we were going to talk a little bit about Porter Stansberry and what he's going to talk about, because folks, we'll make this quick, but it's very important to you. We've just had a great discussion on protecting your assets. And Porter said he's going to tell you where the smart money is going in SPACs. And that's an incredible opportunity. And you mentioned his $1 billion. That was because of a SPAC.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I don't know, do you have it on your landing page? Can you click on the little video Porter did about his presentation? If you don't have that, maybe we can help make sure you get that.
Our super producer, Brian, will build it in. As a matter of fact, it's only 1 minute and 16 seconds. So we're going to pause, and he's going to insert
it in there. Put it at the end of the program. I'm sure he'd be happy with that. The
program.
There's some other great videos too, including a 3-4 minute video Ron Paul did for the event, and all the speakers did little short videos. So if you want a little taste of the speakers and what you're going to hear about, please go to the landing page that Carter's suggesting, and you should be able to access those. And as I said, if you can't make it in person, the next best thing is sign up for the virtual registration.
And if you go to offshore.club, here's this shameless self-promotion. If you go to offshore.club and sign up for the daily Offshore Gazette, Offshore Club Gazette, you will be getting these videos in your Gazette over the course of the next week or so. So that's
All right.
important. It's really important. So, Joel, this has been great. I mean, we talked about asset protection. We talked about investment, saving your money, making money, which is what we talk about every week here at Joel Nagel's Wealth Fortress Report, and what is we're really going to be zoning in on at the President's Week Conference 25. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Carter. Great. This is a topic that, it's like the Arabian Nights. There's no end. We're just going to keep going on and on. So I hope that we can bring new and interesting information every week. And if you can make it to President's Week, great. If not, we'll be here next week and we'll talk more.
Okay. And as you know, I'm old enough to remember the Huntley-Brinkley report. Joel saying, I never heard of that in my life. That was before Walter Cronkite. That's how long ago it was. And the way they close, and
I do remember David Brinkley. I think that's was.
Well, there we go. Yeah. Huntley-Brinkley closed every evening. I can do this now because Joel, it's nighttime where he is. Every evening they would each turn to the other one and say, good night, Chet. Good night, David. Well, good night, Joel. Thanks for joining us.
Good night, Carter. Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for joining Joel Nagel and the Global Wealth Fortress Report, a whole new approach to asset protection and estate planning so that now you can live the good life at a great price, where the sun never sets on your financial fortress.